In a small, peaceful village nestled between rolling hills, a little girl named Mia lived with her parents. She was a curious and bright child, always exploring the world around her. One sunny afternoon, while playing in her backyard, she heard a faint, distressed chirping. Following the sound, she discovered a tiny crow chick lying helplessly under a tree, its wing injured. Mia's heart melted. Without hesitation, she gently picked up the chick and ran inside, calling for her mother. "We have to help it," she pleaded. Her mother, seeing the determination in Mia's eyes, agreed. Together, they nursed the chick back to health, feeding it and keeping it warm. Mia named the crow Shadow for its dark, shimmering feathers. From that day on, Shadow and Mia became inseparable. The crow followed her everywhere, perching on her shoulder as she played in the garden or sat by the window, watching the world outside. But little did Mia know this bond would one day save her life in the most unexpected way. As weeks turned into months, Shadow grew stronger and more agile. His injured wing healed completely, and soon he was soaring through the skies with ease. But no matter how far he flew, he always returned to Mia. The two shared a bond that was unlike anything anyone in the village had ever seen. Mia's parents often marveled at the friendship. "It's like Shadow understands her," her father would say, watching the crow mimic Mia's laughter with a series of playful caws. Mia taught Shadow tricks, how to fetch small twigs, how to hop in a circle, and even how to dance by bobbing his head to her clapping. In return, Shadow brought her little gifts, shiny pebbles, colorful leaves, and once, even a lost button that sparkled in the sunlight. But Shadow wasn't just a playful companion. He was fiercely protective of Mia. If a stranger came too close, Shadow would let out a warning caw and puff up his feathers, standing guard like a tiny sentinel. Mia's mother often joked, "That crow loves her more than we do." Life was simple and joyful for Mia. Every day was an adventure with Shadow by her side. But one fateful afternoon, everything changed. One crisp autumn afternoon, Mia and Shadow were playing near the edge of the forest just beyond her backyard. The trees were a blaze of red and gold, and the air was filled with the earthy scent of fallen leaves. Mia was chasing Shadow as he flitted from branch to branch, his caws echoing like laughter. Suddenly, Mia stopped in her tracks. She felt a sharp, stabbing pain in her chest, as if an invisible hand had clenched her heart. She gasped for air, clutching at her throat. Shadow immediately sensed something was wrong. He swooped down to her side, cawing frantically. Mia tried to call for help, but no sound came out. Her vision blurred, and she collapsed to the ground. Shadow took off like a bolt of black lightning, flying straight to Mia's house. He crashed into the kitchen window, pecking at the glass with desperate urgency. Mia's mother, startled by the noise, rushed outside to find her daughter lying motionless in the grass. She screamed for her husband, and together they carried Mia inside, their hearts pounding with fear. The village doctor was called, but by the time he arrived, Mia's breathing had grown shallow and her skin was pale as snow. The doctor did everything he could, but after hours of trying to revive her, he shook his head sadly. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice heavy with grief. "There's nothing more I can do." Mia's parents were devastated. They couldn't believe their vibrant, lively daughter was gone. They prepared for the unthinkable, a funeral for their little girl. Meanwhile, Shadow refused to leave Mia's side. He perched on the windowsill of her room, his sharp eyes watching every movement. He cawed softly as if trying to wake her, but there was no response. On the day of the funeral, the entire village gathered to mourn the loss of the sweet girl who had brought so much joy to their lives. Mia's small coffin was placed in the center of the church, surrounded by flowers. Shadow, who had followed the procession, perched on the edge of the coffin, his head tilted as if confused. As the priest began to speak, Shadow suddenly hopped onto the coffin lid. He pecked at the wood, his caws growing louder and more insistent. The mourners tried to shoo him away, but Shadow wouldn't budge. He pecked harder, his beak tapping against the wood like a drumbeat. The mourners froze as Shadow's persistent pecking grew louder. Mia's father, tears streaming down his face, stepped forward to gently guide the crow away. But before he could reach him, a faint sound came from inside the coffin, a soft, muffled cough. The entire church fell silent. Everyone held their breath, their eyes fixed on the coffin. Shadow let out a triumphant caw and hopped off the lid, circling above it. Mia's mother rushed forward, her hands trembling as she pushed the lid open. There, lying inside, was Mia, Her eyes fluttered open and she took a deep, gasping breath. Her face was pale, but she was alive. The crowd erupted into gasps and cries of disbelief. Mia's parents pulled her into their arms, sobbing with relief. The doctor, who had been standing at the back of the church, rushed forward to examine her. "It's a miracle," he whispered, shaking his head in awe. "She wasn't dead. She was in a deep coma. Her body must have shut down to protect itself." Mia, still weak and confused, looked around the church. Her eyes landed on Shadow, who was perched on a nearby pew, watching her intently. She smiled weakly and whispered, "Thank you, Shadow." The crow cawed softly as if to say, "You're welcome." News of Mia's miraculous recovery spread like wildfire through the village. People came from far and wide to see the little girl who had come back from the brink of death and the crow who had refused to let her go. Shadow became a local legend, his story told and retold with growing wonder. For Mia, life slowly returned to normal, but nothing was quite the same. She was more aware of the fragility of life, and she cherished every moment with her family and Shadow. The bond between her and the crow grew even stronger. Shadow seemed to understand her in a way no one else could. He was her protector, her confidant, and her best friend. Mia's parents, too, saw Shadow in a new light. They no longer saw him as just a pet or a wild bird, but as a guardian angel who had saved their daughter's life. They built a small perch for him near Mia's bedroom window, where he could come and go as he pleased. But Shadow's role in Mia's life didn't end there. Over time, it became clear that the crow had an almost supernatural sense of danger. One day, while Mia was playing near the river, Shadow began cawing frantically and tugging at her sleeve. Confused, Mia followed him away from the water just moments before a large branch from a nearby tree crashed down onto the spot where she had been standing. Another time, Shadow alerted the family to a fire that had started in the kitchen while they were asleep. Thanks to his warning, they were able to put out the flames before any serious damage was done. It was as if Shadow had made it his mission to keep Mia safe, no matter what. As the years passed, Mia grew into a kind and thoughtful young girl, deeply influenced by her extraordinary friendship with Shadow. She often told her friends, "Shadow isn't just a crow. He's my family." Years turned into decades, and Mia grew into a young woman. Shadow, now an old crow with feathers tinged with silver, remained by her side. Though he no longer flew as high or as fast as he once did, his loyalty never wavered. The bond between them had become the stuff of legend in the village, a tale passed down from generation to generation. One quiet evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Mia sat in the garden with Shadow perched on her shoulder. She gently stroked his feathers, her mind filled with memories of their adventures. "You've been with me through everything," she whispered. "I don't know what I'd do without you." Shadow cawed softly, nuzzling her cheek. It was as if he understood every word. That night, Shadow didn't return to his perch. Mia found him the next morning, lying peacefully in the garden, his eyes closed as if in sleep. Her heart ached, but she knew he had lived a long and extraordinary life. She buried him under the tree where they had first met, planting flowers that would bloom every spring as a reminder of their unbreakable bond. Mia went on to become a teacher, sharing her story with her students to inspire them about the power of love, loyalty, and hope. She often told them, "True friendship knows no bounds. It can cross species, defy logic, and even cheat death." And though Shadow was gone, his presence lingered. Every time a crow cawed in the distance or a black feather drifted down from the sky, Mia would smile, knowing her faithful friend was still watching over her. The story of Mia and Shadow became a timeless tale, a testament to the extraordinary connections that can exist between humans and animals. It reminded everyone who heard it that even in the darkest moments, there is always a glimmer of hope, and sometimes that hope comes in the form of a crow with a heart as big as the sky.
Subscribe and press the bell icon so that you never miss the amazing video.